Kenny broke on a mountain in Monterrey, Mexico. He was alone, bleeding, and crawling for 12 hours with nothing but a prayer and a butterfly. He was a road manager for some of the biggest names in music, but that day, none of that mattered. This episode is about surrendering to survive and what comes after, and also the slow, sacred work of becoming the man your son and your kids can look up to, not for what you built, but for what you walked through. Thanks for joining me, Kenny.
Jeff, man, I'm so stoked to be here, man. Thank you for having me on.
So maybe you can walk us through what happened. I'm in Mexico right now. Well, not in Mexico right now, but I've been spending the better part of the year there. I haven't encountered anything like you have.
Well, man, I've spent 20 years traveling the world in some of the, craziest places, third world countries, and all over Mexico. And honestly, after 20 years, that's the first time I've experienced something like that. Now, to be honest with you, when you're a traveler like I am in the music industry, they tell you, hey, listen, stay towards city centers, don't venture out in certain neighborhoods. And of course, you would say that's the same with any major city. But to be honest with you, Mexico specifically is palpably ran by the cartel. I've actually experienced certain areas of Mexico where, like, the cartel was the security of the venues that I've been at. Outside of some like the major cities of Mexico City or Monterrey, some of the smaller areas, it's, they run that country, to be honest with you. I have friends in Mexico that say that they can't even visit some of their family members, an hour or two in the countryside because that hour or two in between the major city and their grandparents' house is just too scary to venture out into. And so, yeah, you're right. If you're not venturing out into some areas outside of these tourist areas or the expat areas, you're not going to experience what I experienced.
So can you walk us through what happened that day?
Sure, man. Gosh, where to start? I guess I'll just kind of start from the beginning of the day. I was on tour with a major music artist, as you mentioned, doing production. And we had just flown in from Mexico City to Monterrey for our travel day off. And I've been to Monterrey a half dozen or so times prior to this. In fact, I stayed at the same hotel that this happened near. And that was what was so surprising was this incident happened a couple of blocks from my hotel on the tourist side of Monterrey. And I'll give you a little bit more context. But basically, we were into a travel day off. We flew in from Mexico City, and I'm a fitness guy. I'm big on personal development and mental toughness because, touring is a tough industry. It's one thing, long hours, setting up, concerts and traveling from time zone to time zone. But like touring in general, you've heard the old sex, drugs, and rock and roll adage. Well, it's not too far off. There's a lot of things, let's just say, that resist you on the road. And so something that I've prided myself on is being able to man up and kind of get in front of that with personal development and mental toughness. In fact, I was actually doing a program called 75 Hard. Have you ever heard of 75 Hard, Jeff?
I have.
So for your listeners that don't know what 75 Hard is, 75 Hard was created by Andy Frisella. And this will all make sense here in just a minute. It pertains directly to what happened. But Andy Frisella created 75 Hard, which is basically like 5 things that you do to practice mental toughness and personal development. And I like to do this on the road because it adds an extra layer of difficulties. While as you're traveling, it's kind of tough to do 75 Hard. So 75 Hard is you do 2 45-minute workouts. One of them has to be outside, hint, hint. And you drink a gallon of water every day. Or you read 10 pages of a personal development or nonfiction business book, something like that. You have a nutrition plan that you follow to your fitness goals. You don't drink alcohol, and you take a progress picture of yourself. So it's a pretty rigid framework, but you can do this for 75 days. And the effects of this, it helps me be a lot more prepared and sharp for not just the crazy world of touring that I've been in for over 20 years, but like life in general, And so by the time we made it to Monterrey, Mexico, I had already done my first 45-minute workout on 75 hard, and I did it in the gym in Mexico City that morning. And by the time we made it to the hotel, it was around 5:30 in the evening time, and I still needed to do my 45-minute outdoor workout. And so I wanted to go on a hike somewhere close by because Monterrey, if you don't know, it's in the northern part of Mexico in the state of Nuevo Leon. So it's like really mountainous. And I mean, think like California style mountains, like really tall, rocky, rigid mountains. There's like thorn bushes and cactus and aloe, like that type of landscape. Really beautiful valleys and tall mountains. And the way Monterey is on one side of like this long mountain range sits the tourist side of town. Tall skyscrapers, high-end malls like Gucci stores and things like that. Like when you think Mexico, you don't think this kind of area, but Monterey is a very rich city. But on the other side of this mountain range is like old Mexico. Old, favelas, like really dense neighborhoods, that type of thing. And so our hotel sat at the base of this mountain range. And by the time I made it up to my hotel room, I'm on the phone with my wife and I talked to my two little kids. I have two toddlers at home, and just to catch up with them before I headed out on my run, that I was just going to go for a 45-minute outdoor run, get cleaned up, drop my stuff, and go to dinner with the guys. Per normal. It didn't end up that way, man. I was looking out the back window of my hotel, and there was this hiking trail that went up to the top of this mountain ridge that split the two areas of the city. And on the top of this mountain ridge was a dirt road. And I thought to myself, well, it'd be pretty cool to be able to like go up to the top of this mountain, hike up the road a little bit, and then check out the valley, the views. I've been wanting to do it every time I gone to Monterey. It's just I've been so busy with shows. But I'd love to just go check out the views, knock out my 45-minute workout, and just kind of have a different experience before dinner. And I'm looking at this hiking trail, Jeff, and there's like normal people hiking up and down this trail, like people, like old people, young people, families, kids. There was people wearing all different types of uniforms that clearly worked in the valley below, like in the restaurants, or some were wearing scrubs that may have worked at the hospital on the tourist side. And so it was clearly like a local commuter trail. So instead of these people that lived on the other side of the mountain driving all the way around, because it probably would take you an hour to drive all the way around the mountain ridge to work, they just cut up and over. And so I was like, well, that'd be perfect. I'll just go hike up this trail, go check out the views, take some photos, get my workout in. It'll be awesome. I'll get back well before dark. Well, I decided to do just that, Matt. So just to set the scene of why I was even up on that mountain in the first place and why it was so treacherous was because of what I didn't know was that the neighborhood that was directly on the other side of this mountain range was one of the most dangerous favelas neighborhoods in all of the Americas. Because like I mentioned, Monterrey sits in the state of Nuevo Leon, which is just below Texas, and it is like cartel land. And in fact, this is one of the oldest cartel kind of headquarters, if you will, neighborhoods in all of Mexico. I found this out later, by the way. I learned this from some of the locals later on and some of the government officials later on about this area. And what the hotel never told me was, hey man, that's a local trail, like you shouldn't be going up there, which is what they should have said. But I didn't know this. And so I grabbed my water bottle. It's actually the same one that I have here. I grabbed my water bottle and my phone, my room key. I threw on my running shorts, a t-shirt, and I had my headphones in because I was listening to a podcast on my run. And so I headed out of the hotel, told my wife, I love you. I'm headed out on my run. And I go and hike up this trail. Now, it took me about 15 minutes to kind of hike up to the top of this mountain ridge, and I started to kind of go up the dirt road a little ways to get a little higher elevation so I could take some better pictures because the sun wasn't down, but it was starting to kind of like be the evening time. It was probably around 6:15 p.m. in the evening time. Beautiful out, man. Like I said, Monterrey's beautiful. And so I go up there and I'm snapping some photos. the valley, taking some panos, getting some shots. I'm like, this is awesome. I can't wait to show my kids this. And I'm listening to the podcast. I turn around to go walk back to the trailhead because I was just going to go down to the mountain and go finish my run and then go to dinner. As I'm doing this, I'm walking back to the trailhead. All of a sudden, this motorcycle pulls right up on me, like right up on my right side with two men on this motorcycle. And they're like yelling at me in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. They're yelling at me and they're kind of like motioning in a rectangle like your phone, basically. And so I kind of played dumb a little bit. I kind of pointed to my headphones like I'm listening to a podcast. I held up my water bottle like just on, on a run, that type thing. And I start walking a little bit more with urgency back to the trailhead. Of course, I'm, probably 150 yards away from the trailhead at this point. And then all of a sudden, one of those two guys had jumped off the motorcycle and was walking like right up next to me, like real close on me, yelling at me, basically saying, give me your phone, which is what I assumed. Well, in my mind, I'm thinking, what the heck? Like that startled me. And so I looked back and the other guy had parked the motorcycle in the middle of the road, had grabbed this small boulder and was kind of lightly jogging at me. And he chunks this boulder at me. And I kind of duck and it went past my head and crashed on the dirt road. And I thought to myself, screw this. I'm out of here, man. Because you hear about the stories of cartel disappearing Westerners all the time, beheading people. Like, they tell you this stuff, but you never think that you're going to run into it, especially so close to your hotel. And so I just I'm out of here, man. And so I started taking off running for my life as they were chasing me. Shall I continue on?
Absolutely.
So I'm running for my life, Jeff. I'm like the steep mountain is on my left side. I'm on the dirt road. I'm taking off running. And of course, I'm a fitness guy, so I'm way faster than these guys. And I'm running. Well, a couple of seconds after I started really running fast, they had thrown another kind of small boulder right at me. And this time it clipped my left ear. And it caused me to stumble and fall. And when I did, my phone, because my phone was in my hand, my phone bust, my headphones popped out, my hat flung off, and my water bottle all come crashing. And I go and kind of fall on the dirt road. I try to catch myself, and I kind of rolled a little bit. I don't know if you've ever fallen on a dirt road before, but or on gravel. But when you do, it's like gravel in your hands and in my knees because I'm just wearing shorts and a t-shirt. And I kind of roll, and I go to pop up. And I look back and those two guys are still coming at me, but past them up the dirt road a bit was two more matching motorcycles with two guys apiece on them, hauling ass towards me. And I was like, dude, I'm out of here, man. Obviously these guys were clearly not wanting to just rob me. They were going to hurt me. And I've got two little babies at home. I got two little kids at home, man. And my wife. And so I took off running and I'm running for my life. And then that's when I heard the first gunshot. They started shooting at me. And in my mind, I'm like, man, I am not about to die today. I am not about to die today. I've got kids and they need their father. And so my instinct was to just jump off the mountain. I literally just leapt off this mountain. Now, this mountain, like I said, was full of really dense thorn bushes and rocks and cactus and aloe plants, that type of landscape. And this area that I jumped off of, you wouldn't even walk down it because it was so thick. They had carved out this commuter trail purposefully between all of this dense foliage, but I had no choice, man. It was either leap or die. And so I jumped off the mountain. I heard another gunshot as I was jumping off the mountain, and because I was running so fast forward and the mountain was so steep, when I went to go to try to land, it just snapped my femur. And my femur snaps and I roll about 30 or so feet and I slam into this cactus. And I'm like, fight or flight. I kind of try to jump back up because I feel like they're still chasing me. And, of course, when I snapped my femur, I screamed loudly what I actually said was, I've got kids. That's the first thought in my mind was my kids, man. And so I slam into this cactus. I go to try to stand up because of the pain just shoots through my body because I broke my femur. I'd never broken anything before. I collapse again, roll about another 15 feet, and I break my left forearm. And I roll into this thorn bush. And so I kind of drag myself into this thorn bush, and I'm like, I'm assessing the damage. I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy, man. And I'm assessing the damage, and I look at my elbow, and my bone is like pushing against my elbow, which in my mind I thought, oh, maybe it's just a dislocated elbow. Like, that's what I thought. So I went snap, and I snapped it back into place because I didn't know it was broken at this time. I literally, actually, throughout the whole time, I didn't realize it was broken. I just thought it was just kept dislocating. I didn't realize I was just resetting the bone. But I snapped it back into place. I'm trying to catch my composure. And by that point, I hear the other motorcycles had finally got to the top of the mountain, about 50 feet or 45, 50 feet above me. And I hear them all yelling at each other. And then I hear a couple of the guys go to the hiking trail and kind of start to go towards the hiking trail and down the hiking trail, which was probably another 50 yards in front of me, to try and cut me off, right? And I look up through the thorn bushes, and I realized, like, these guys hadn't seen me yet. They didn't see where I had rolled because they're like looking and trying to see where I had rolled. And then all of a sudden, two of them started to try and like make their way through the foliage and start to come down the mountain to find me, to hunt me. And I was like, oh God. I said, God, please. I was like, what do I do? I had no clue, man. I was like, if I sit here, I'm a sitting duck. Like, they're just going to find me. But if I move, maybe they'll hear me. If I don't move, they're going to find, like, what do I do, man? And so Jeff, I did the only thing that I knew how to do, which was I cried out to God to save my life. I'm sitting there in this thorn bush, and I said, God, please, like, please tell me what to do, man. I don't want to die. And at that moment, Jeff, this hummingbird flies right in front of my face and starts feeding on the flower in front of my face on this thorn bush that I'm in. And in my mind, I'm like, wow, that's so beautiful. Like, literally 2 feet from my face, this hummingbird. I'm like, that is so beautiful. And then at the same split thought, I'm like, God, you are such a comedian. Like, showing me this beauty and this chaos. I'm grateful. But please, if you want me to live, like, please tell me what to do. Like, show me what to do. And I'm like kind of yelling this. And then at that split moment, this monarch butterfly flies right by my left head. And I hear this loud voice internally yelling at me. And it says, follow the butterfly. And I get this divine strength. I put my right hand down. I put my left leg down. And I just drag myself from the thorn bush that I was in to an even denser thorn bush, which was like 10 or 12 feet further down the mountain in front of me. And of course, the thorns are all ripping my body to pieces and, it's super painful, but there's a hierarchy to pain, right? Like, I've got a broken hip at this point and a broken arm. And so even though it's ripping me to pieces, I pull myself into this dense thorn bush. This butterfly, not startled by me at all, lands on the bush, inside the bush, right in front of me. And I just crouch next to it. And I'm like waiting, and then about a minute and a half later, one of the two guys, he must have heard me, comes around the bush that I was in. And I was like, what the fuck? This is crazy, man. And I'm like waiting there, and I look across the valley, and I see the bottom of the sun start to touch the tops of the mountain across the valley. And I just had this innate sense, like, okay, like, I'm safe for the moment. I gotta wait till dark. I gotta wait till dark before I move again. And to be honest with you, Jeff, that's when the real craziness started.
That's when the real craziness started. I mean,
Man,
you're leading us. You're just leading us down this path of a story that's going crazier.
man, I'll tell you, I know that's all crazy, right? Like, obviously leaping off the mountain and being chased and hunted by the cartel and shot at. And, to be honest with you, the hardest part about all of that was the surrender. Because I'm such a, like, control guy, like, obviously with exercise and fitness. But like, it was so hard not knowing what to do. And then just like going, please tell me. Because what I ended up doing was, when I pulled myself into that thorn bush, the solution to fix myself was more painful than where I was. Even though where I was going to kill me if I stayed there. You know, that was like some of the irony. And I knew in my mind some of these lessons that I was learning and going through as I was going through it, you know? And the reason why I say that's when the craziness started, Jeff, because, dude, I spent 12 hours dragging my broken body down that mountain that night. Nobody knew I was out there. My wife didn't know. I had no communication with anyone. Nobody on the tour knew I was down up there. And I went through so much. Like, most people are trying to climb mountains in their lives. I was trying to get down one, man. I'm just trying to get down a mountain to save my life. And so when it got dark, I kept pushing. Like, I knew it was like, okay, I can't just keep sitting here. I've got to move. The crazy thing was I would like drag my body along. Like, I drag my body along, like my butt and my back, and I'm trying to pull myself because I couldn't walk. Or I'd flip over on my one side, the non-broken hip side. I would flip over and I would drag myself that way. And then I found myself, sometimes I'd be on my belly upside down, this steep incline, dragging myself, until my body just got all rashed up from dragging myself on these rocks and thorns and these little cactus balls. Gosh. And finally, I'm like, man, I'm like in crazy pain. And I look down and I see this rock. Okay. Cause I only had one hand to push myself along, and I see this rock, and this rock was like thin and flat. And I actually have it here with me. This rock right here. I don't know if you have viewers or if it's just audio here on this podcast, Jeff, but this rock is a very thin, you can see rock. And this rock, just as I found it, fits my fingers perfectly. From the thumb to the fingers, fit my fingers perfectly. So I find this rock, and I was like, yes, like something that I can hold to push myself along, to protect my palm and my hand, and to give me some leverage so I could actually move, because I was like tearing up my hand. And I would move along, and I'd slide along, and then all of a sudden, some pain would shoot in my hip, and I would like grab my hip and drop the rock, and this rock would like fall down the mountain. I'm like, oh no. And then all of a sudden, a few feet down the mountain, the rock would show up again. This would happen time and time again. That's why I say this was a gift from God to me, because without this thing, you can even see some of the greenery that was on here, but this rock really was a lifesaver along this path. But what would happen is I would be pulling myself along or dragging myself along, and I'd run into some obstacle, like some tree or some bush or some rock to get around, right? And I just couldn't figure out how to do it. I had nothing left in me. And I would give up, man. I would just be like, look, like, they're just going to have to find me. They're going to have to send a search party or something, because like I've got nothing left in me. I'm hurting. I'm broken. I'm in crazy pain. I don't know how to get through this obstacle, and I'm done. And I'd lay my head back in the thorns, and I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes would go by, and then I would get this vision, almost like downloaded into my brain. I would get this vision of me overcoming this certain obstacle, and then this voice would come back, and it would yell at me. It would say, keep moving forward. And it would wake me up. And then I would like get this divine strength. I'd put my hand down, put my leg down, and I would make it through the obstacle in the way that I had envisioned it. I'm like, this is crazy, man. And I'm dragging myself. And this would happen time and time again. I'd get overwhelmed. I'd start, thinking about my family at home. I'd sit there and sob and just think, man, I'm so sorry I got myself into this. I was more upset for my wife and my kids that their dad had gotten themselves into this, that my wife's husband had gotten himself into this predicament. I thought about my kids going, their dad is on the verge of death out here. They have no clue. I was like, I've got to keep moving forward. Like, I've got to make it back, And I would constantly thank God for this rock, or the fact that I didn't hit my head on a rock as I was flipping down the mountain initially, like full of gratitude in this pain. And I'm pushing myself along. And the irony was I could literally look up, because the mountain's so steep. My hotel was only like 2 blocks away. And I could literally hear the rooftop deck up top and the music in the restaurant. I could literally see my room, which was on the 9th floor with the curtains open and my water bottle was sitting on the table at the window. I could see my room. I could see my hotel, but it might as well have been a million miles away, man. Because it would take me sometimes 2 hours to move 15 feet. And I'm dragging myself along, and I would look at the hotel and I'm just like, I'd get overwhelmed and I'd want to give up. But then I was like, you know what? My personal development would kick in. My practice that I've practiced forever. I would say, you know what? I got to stop looking at the hotel. I need to start shortening the goal. And so I would like focus on the next bush or the next rock or like the next tree, or there was this walled compound that was around this house on the street level that I was trying to work my way to. I was like, I just focus on the wall, and then it was like the same routine, man. It would be like, I would move forward, run into the obstacles. I would give up, and then I would get the visions, hear the voice, keep moving forward. I would move through these obstacles. I'd want to give up because the mundane minutia of like dragging my broken body along and the pain of it all would be like, I'm never going to get off this mountain. And then I would look up at the hotel to kind of get re-inspired, right? Well, finally I make it to that wall that's around this house, this compound, very tall concrete wall with barbed wire across the top. And I knew from hiking up the trail that house sat on the street side, but the compound was huge. And, on one side of the compound was the hiking trail that I went up. Obviously, I couldn't go that direction. So I had to go the other direction. And the other side of this wall was insanely dense with like forest and foliage and like tons of thorns and all that. And listen, man, I've watched enough Discovery Channel and Naked and Afraid to know that like this area of Mexico has tons of tarantulas and rattlesnakes and banana spiders and scorpions. And like, that's going through my mind as I'm pulling myself along. But I thought, listen, if that's how I'm going to go at this point, like that's how I'm going to go. I'm just got to keep moving forward. So I finally make it to this wall, and I had another gift. There was this like tire that had been filled with concrete and had a metal pole sticking out of it, almost like a tether ball kind of tire. And so I like, man, this was like such a welcome relief to get some like blood flowing down my leg from my hip. So I kind of like pulled myself up onto this pole, this pipe that was sticking out of this tire. And I'm kind of bouncing on one leg. I had my right leg up on the tire a little bit. I could feel the blood rushing down, the winds across my face, across the mountain. I heard the neighborhood dogs barking. Of course, they were barking throughout the night. And I'm like, oh man, just need to take a minute. And I look up the mountain to kind of see how far I come. And at this point, I'm about 2/3 down the mountain. And I was like, gosh, man, it's probably 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning by this point. And the reason why I know this is because I grew up as a Boy Scout, and you know that the moon high in the sky is midnight. And as it crosses over, it becomes, the other side of midnight. And so the moon was a little bit past midnight, and I'm standing there and I look up on the mountain, up back to the dirt road, just kind of recollecting like, oh my God, like this is crazy. And all of a sudden I hear like the dogs start to really bark, and I see like floodlights turn on, which what looked like back porch lights of the neighborhood homes that I could see the kind of backs of their houses up on the top of the mountain ridge. And I see these 6 lights turn on. And I hear the dogs barking. And then all of a sudden, these 6 lights start to come down the mountain towards me. I was like, oh my God, like they're coming back after me. Like clearly I didn't pop out, so they they went, ate dinner and came back to come hunt me again with dogs this time. And I thought to myself, okay, man, like, you can't outrun dogs. But obviously I had to keep moving forward. I had to fight. I was going to fight to the last minute, man. And at that moment, I actually have my room key on me, which I actually have right here. I still have this stuff. I have my room key on me, and the way I do my room key everywhere I travel is I always they give it to you in this little card, like paper card or an envelope, and I'll rip off the room number and put it with my key because I sometimes forget, right, what the room number is. And I actually thought like they're going to find me this time. I've got almost nothing left in me, so I took the paper off and ate it. Because I didn't want them, if they were going to find me, they were going to get my room key. I didn't want them to know what room it was. So they could get my computer, they could find my family. Like, I didn't know, right? And so I just like collapsed down on the ground because I couldn't hop. I thought, man, I'm against this wall. I could just hop along the wall. But the problem is the pain of my hip and femur being separated was too painful. I did one hop and I just collapsed again. And I come collapsing down on my left side. I'm like, and I hear their dogs coming. The floodlights are coming down the mountain and they're looking. Of course, they're moving slow because they're looking in all these bushes and trying to find me. And I thought, man, did they see me? Because the wall was kind of in a little bit of a clearing. I thought, oh, shoot, did they see me? So I'm like, well, if I can stay along the wall, I could follow the wall all the way to the street level. Like I know it goes to the street because I saw it. And so I'm kind of going along the wall and about 6 feet down the wall, about 2 meters down the wall, all of a sudden the ground gave way into this black pit, this deep, dark gully that I could not see the other side of. I could not see the bottom of. It was covered in all of these kind of small trees and foliage. And it was just black. And I was like, oh my God. Like, if I go down there, I might not make it out. You know what I mean? I'm like, if I go down this hole, I might not make it out the other side. I don't even know what's down there. I don't know what's on the other side. I was like, I'm going to have to go around. And so I started to go around this gully and I could hear them getting closer. I could hear their voices talking at this point to each other. The dogs are barking. I'm like, this is crazy. And I'm trying to drag myself along. I'm dragging myself along with the one hand. I've got the rock dug in, And I make it to this kind of really thin thorn bush, and I had nothing left. I was like, I can't move anymore. I was like, this is it. And so I flipped on my back, and I had this white logo on my shirt. I covered the logo. And I just sat there and I thought about my family for a minute. I thought about my kids and I'm sobbing to myself. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I got myself into this. My kids. And I just prayed to God. I said, God, please don't let them find me. Please don't let them find me. And about 10 or 15 minutes later, I could hear one of them like really close, like 10 or 15 feet from this bush that I was in. And I could hear him breathing. I could hear the dog barking. And I thought, oh, God, if this is it, I was like, thank you, God, for my life. I was like, thank you. Thank you. That's all I could muster. And then the guy started walking the other way. He just started walking the other way, Jeff. I don't even know why. But they just literally passed the bush and kept walking. And I laid there for like 40 minutes thinking, no way. Like maybe they're just like, I don't know what's going on. And they just started walking the other way. Like I had this dome over me or something. And so I was like, well, I got to keep moving forward. I heard the voice like, keep moving forward, man. And so I started dragging myself along once again. And as they're getting further and further away and they're, still looking for me, still hunting me, but like they just didn't see me. And I started to drag myself a little further and I look over and I see the wall again. And in the moonlight was shining through the trees. This time I saw another gully, but I could see the other side of the gully and it was dark at the bottom, but I could see that like the other side of this gully actually does go along the wall. And I thought if I could just make it down this gully, hit that wall, man, I could make it to the street before daylight, hopefully. And at this point, it's probably, 3 o'clock in the morning. And so I decided to do just that. I'm on my stomach. This is crazy, actually. I'm on my stomach and I'm kind of like military crawling with like one arm and one leg kind of pushing along. And it's, of course, my body's ripped up. But at this point, I'm like, I don't care, I gotta keep moving forward. I gotta get out of here. I gotta make it back to my kids and my family. and I slide down this gully. Okay. And it was probably like 12 feet deep. And I slide down this gully head first. I'm like, and I land at the bottom of it and I look over to my right, and in the moonlight is this whole patch of aloe plants. I'm like, thank you, God. I'm like, I hadn't eaten anything since probably 5 o'clock that morning in Mexico City. I had no water. It was desert climate. I'm like, my mouth is like sandpaper. I need some sustenance. I had no energy. I was like, thank you, God. And at the same thought in my mind, I'm thinking about the banana spiders that live in these out I've seen on Discovery Channel. And I look over into the aloe plants, and along the aloe plants, stretched out, looking at me, is this like snake. And this snake, I don't know how to pertain it, but it was probably the size, the thickness of like almost like a baseball bat or like a skinny forearm. Like it was a proper snake, I couldn't see the back end of it, but I saw the head and I could see about 3 feet of it. And I was like, oh, Mr. Snake, I'm just passing through, just passing through. This snake, Jeff, I was in that gully. It took me almost 3 hours to pass through that gully to get to the other side. That snake didn't mess with me. A couple of times it moved and things like that, but like it never came after me. It never tried to get me. It just watched me. I would break off aloe near it, relatively near it, break off some aloe and eat the aloe. And by the way, I think aloe has like some sort of protective mechanism, because like I would eat the aloe and it would be like refreshing, but then it would like dry my mouth out like hairspray or something. So I don't know, maybe that's like some sort of protective mechanism that aloe has or something, but boy, delicious, refreshing. And then it would like dry me up even worse. So much so it got to the point where I actually had, and I don't even know that I've even told anybody this, at least publicly, but it actually dried me up so much. When I finally made it through the gully, I ended up having to rinse my mouth out with pee, because my mouth was so dry from this aloe. Like I didn't know what to do. I didn't drink my pee. I could have, but like it was what I had left in me. But the same thing happened, man. In that gully, the reason why it took me 3 hours is because I would give up. I was in a hole, a literal hole. There was like all of these branches that were crisscrossed at the bottom of this gully that I had to get my hip over. And I'm trying to lift my leg up and I'm trying to roll over it, and the pain. And like I would give up, lay my head back. I get the visions on how to overcome the challenge. Keep moving forward. The voice would yell at me and I would get this divine strength. So I make it to the wall, along the wall. And I get to this another gift, actually, which was this 5-gallon bucket that was sitting by this tree. There was a tree right along the wall, and it was a tight squeeze between thorn bushes, the wall, and this trees, and I had to go around it. And the only way I could go around it was stand up. But what happened last time I stood up was I came crashing back down, and I was like, I can't handle another crash, because man, like I'm in extreme pain by this point. It's one thing breaking your hip, but like dragging it down a mountain for, at this point, probably 11 hours. And so, but I could hear the street. Like I could see some of the street and the cars passing, because the sun was starting to come up, but like you couldn't see the sun. It was like twilight, but the city was starting to wake up. And so I was like, man, I'm almost there. And so I pulled myself up on this tree and I kind of swung around the tree and I sat on this 5-gallon bucket on the other side. I was like, oh man, I was able to get my feet across, my hip across. And then of course I kept dragging myself along this area, and I finally get to the last 12 feet of the wall. And on the last 12 feet of the wall, down to the sidewalk, was like about a 8 to 10 foot hill full of this tall grass. And then I got another gift, which was half of a plastic 5-gallon bin, or maybe not 5-gallon bin, but like a half of a plastic bin, like a Tupperware bin. And it was like perfect enough for me to like stick my head and shoulders in this bin, because I came upside down on my back at this point, and it like pushed the grass to the side and gave me enough slide to kind of slide down the hill till I finally made it to street level. And I'm like upside down, and in my mind I'm thinking, dude, these guys could be down here. Like they could just be waiting on me to come off this mountain. And at this point, I'm about 2.5 blocks away from the start of the trailhead on the other side of this compound. And I get down there, and all of a sudden, right when I slide down the street level, a car starts to pass by the road, and it turns and starts to face me. Headlights right on me. And I'm all like deer in the headlights, literally. I'm wide-eyed, and I make eye contact with the driver, and he's wide-eyed. And I look in, and I thought, man, is this the cartel? Like, this is too coincidental, right? And it was like 6 construction guys with their vest on headed to work. They must have made a wrong turn, but like just so happened to turn around right where I was falling out. They looked at me all wide-eyed, and then they backed up and left. And in my mind, I'm thinking they see this crazy gringo all bloodied up, scratched up, upside down on this hill, coming off the mountain. They probably knew exactly what happened, and they wanted no part of it, you know? And so I drag myself to street level, and I'm scared each car that starts to pass by. I'm like, I don't know who's who, man. Fortunately, I didn't see any guys down there, and I need to get across to the other side of the street because my hotel was like 2.5 blocks down, and then like another block and a half down a kind of a mountain peak to my hotel. And so I drag myself across the pavement, this 2-lane road, to the other side of the sidewalk. And then here comes, Jeff, another gift. This one's crazy, man. On the 2 blocks of sidewalk that I had to drag myself down, which I had nothing left in me, my body's scratched up, I had no more unrashed places on my body, and only on this 2 blocks that I had to drag myself was a layer of hay. Like there wasn't a construction site or anything, but for some reason, not before it, not after it, not across the road, but on the 2 blocks that I drug my body was enough hay to soften me to where I could manage the drag. And then on top of that, it gave me a little bit of slide to help me prepare or propel myself more as I was dragging myself. I would do it in 10 counts. And Jeff, it took me an hour. It took me an hour to go from that start of the hay 2 blocks down the sidewalk. And during that hour, cars are passing. I'm kind of hiding from some I'm like, help, trying to reach out to. There were people that saw me on the sidewalk as they were driving by and went like literally blew me off. Like, nope, not helping you. These people probably knew what was going on to some degree. And so I finally make it to the corner, and as I was going to round the corner and start to head down, I see this young guy. He's on his cell phone talking on speakerphone across the street. And he's like coming down the mountain. Maybe he's like walking to go to work or something. And I yell out, I'm like, help me, help me. I could barely talk because of the dry mouth. And he startled, hears me, sees me, and he walks kind of carefully across the street. Now, mind you, at this point, it's like 7 o'clock in the morning. Okay, 6:45, 7 o'clock in the morning. And I go, help me. I was like, listen, you don't have to touch me. You don't have to help me up. But like, can you just go around the corner and tell the hotel staff that one of their guests has been attacked and he can't walk? And he's like, okay. He confirms the hotel and he goes down because there's like a strip of hotels right here down this mountain. And he goes down to go get him. And I look over and I'm right across the street from the trailhead where I had went up. And it took them about 8 minutes to finally him to get down there to tell them to get the car to come get me. But like, that was one of the scariest 8 minutes because there were actually people that came down the trail to go to work. And I thought at any moment, like, man, they're going to come down and just get me at this point. And so finally the hotel brought an Escalade vehicle to come and they drug me into the car. I mean, it was one of the most painful pickups in my life because I broken hip and broken arm, and they kind of like laid me face first onto the back seat and they gave me some Coca-Cola and some water. And I was just like, at that point, I like started to kind of pull down and around. And I looked back at the mountain and I was just like all of this shock, that I was going through. And I finally make it back to the hotel and I'm trying to tell the hotel staff like who I was and the tour that I was with, but nobody spoke English. I didn't speak Spanish. They finally found some people from my team, and the tour manager and one of the security personnel with the artist that I was with comes down and they open the door and I just saw the tour manager go white. Like, here's Kenny, the healthy guy, the positive guy, like the guy that is encouraging and supports everybody, like bloodied up. And I just see him and I just start sobbing, man. Like I finally just start sobbing. It kind of hits me. And the security guy goes, do you want to call your wife? I said, please let me just call her. She wasn't going to answer. She didn't know the number. And he's like, I wouldn't leave her a message, man. You don't want to scare her, you know? And I was like, I'm going to leave her a message, you know? And so I call her, and of course it goes to voicemail. And I say, baby, it's me. I said, I was just attacked and I'm badly hurt, but I'm headed to the hospital. I'll call you soon. And I hang up, and she immediately calls back, you know, after she hears this message, you know, from this number. And I start sobbing, and I wasn't able to tell her anything. And because the police were there, they wanted to have you know, a meeting about all of this. I told them nothing, man. Because in my mind, I'm like, you know, the cartel is embedded into all areas of this country down there in these different roles, because you don't know who's who, you know? And so I told the police very little, which I knew very little. I just knew that I was trying to save my life. I just basically told them that it was a gang of guys on 3 matching motorcycles, and there were 6 of them. That's all I could muster. And I finally make it to the Mexican hospital. They take care of me. They're like, sir, it's a miracle that you live, because it's one thing breaking your hip and your femur, but they're like, sir, you have a lot of major arteries that run through that area, that usually when people break a bone in that area, we tell them, like, don't move, because you could have ruptured something and had an aneurysm and died on that mountain. I was like, praise God, you know? And the artist I was with, they ended up sending me a private medical jet to fly me out of the country and back to Tampa, where I lived. And the artist that I was with also got me a really great orthopedic surgeon. I had to have an emergency hip transplant, a total hip transplant, which is its own mind screw at 40 years old. I have a brand new hip and metal in my arm, repaired my broken forearm, and I got my life, man, and I'm back with my family. And of course, recovery has been its own mountain. So I just tell you this, Jeff, and anyone that's listening, like, you, no matter what crisis you go through, these unexpected, crazy challenges that you're going to go through, that's life, right? Like, maybe my hope is that it's not an attack from the cartel, but you're going to go through stuff. But you're a lot stronger than you think you are when it really matters most. You just have to keep moving forward. And that was the biggest lesson that I learned in that experience. I told you, man, you can't make this up.
It's like it started off bad and got worse. It kept getting worse and worse.
Well, spoiler, I didn't die.
Why, if you think if the butterfly visiting you was God,
Yes.
God was helping you out of that position, why did God put you in that position?
Well, I think God puts us in the positions that we go through, and it's all an effort to glorify Him. And, you know, the reality is I'm put here to let people know that He's real, and that even through your hardest moments, especially during your hardest moments, that if we just surrender and we have faith and we do the work, we don't give up, there's blessings on the other side. The beauty in the chaos, the hummingbird, right? Like, there was all of these moments and lessons that I experienced that made me a better man, that I'm now able to be a living example of God's goodness and grace. I wouldn't say He put me through this, but He knew I was going through it, and that He was protecting me through it.
How did that identity as a man shift from before to after?
You would think, Jeff, that when you know for a fact, 1,000%, that you have a God experience and that He enters your life and saves your life, that things would be good. But the problem is I get home and there's like this weird thing in your mind as a man and being a provider and a protector for your family that happens, because when you have a hip transplant, you're up walking the same day. Like, you're up walking not very far, like a few feet, but then like you rapidly get better and better. But me as a man, I'm like, like, let's do this. And I'm like actively trying to get better and better. And I immediately jump back into my home life. I'm trying to do my coaching and training business that I have, helping event crew in their careers. I'm, doing my own podcast. I'm helping around the house as much as I can. I can't lift my children at this point because my broken arm, but I'm trying to tend to the kids, trying to give my wife some time, trying to console her because she went through something. Her husband almost died. And that's the type, like, I'm trying to do this. And then about 2 months or so into this, I started to go through some heavy grief because I never took time to process. And I went through some severe grief to the point to where, like, me, Mr. Positive, starts snapping at my kids and my wife, getting angry. Like, that's not me. I don't get it. I'm a super grateful guy. Like, this is not me. And I went through a period of super darkness. And I was like so angry, like, God, why do I have this darkness on me? You know, like I lost a part of myself on that mountain. I'm a new guy now, identity wise. I feel like I'm a deeper relationship with God, but like I'm struggling here. I'm going through depression. I'm thinking about, me not being here anymore. Like, I don't want to die. Why don't and I was very confused. And the way I processed it was I continued to surrender. One day, and I now believe in the supernatural God, that I feel like a lot of people that are Christians are so focused on the give and take from God. If I do this, then this and this and this. I'm like, man, there is a supernatural element to God. I experienced him on the mountain. And when I was going through this depression and this darkness and recovery, I one night told my wife, I said, babe, I haven't told you this, but I'm seeing this darkness. I'm starting to see visions of me dead on my walks. I'm like, I don't want to die, but I'm just telling you, I am not in a good place right now. And I think it's because I never processed this. I'm going through grief and I never took time for myself. I was like, I need time away, not away from you guys, but time to myself for a minute to figure this out. And the next day I was at physical therapy and the girl at the front desk invites me to church. Now, prior to this, I haven't been to church since I was a kid. Like, and even honestly, prior to this, like I was reading the Bible and a variety of spiritual texts because I believed in God, but like I wasn't a follower of Jesus or anything. But I'm like, maybe I do need to go to church. Like I had this really deep sense of like, maybe I'll go to church. It's non-denominational church. I was against religion. I wanted relationship, and so I get home, or she tells me, invites me to church. She goes, well, if you come at 11, you'll actually get to see me be baptized. And I was like, that's amazing. Congratulations. Well, I will see if I can come at 11. I stepped out the door, Jeff, and this wave of emotion just hit me, brother. And I started sobbing right in front of the physical therapy office. And I turned right back around and I'm like, Evelyn, that's her name. I said, Evelyn, do they do this for everybody? Like, can anyone get baptized? Like, I need help. I didn't know where to turn. And she's like, yeah, well, you just register online. And yeah, absolutely. And I was like, okay. And I get in the car and I turn on the radio and I started listening to Christian music for the first time in ever. And I heard 3 songs back to back to back that like spoke to what I was going through. And I get home, I go upstairs to my wife because my wife's like, how can I help you? I'm like, I don't know. So I get upstairs, I go up to my wife, I'm sobbing. She's like, are you okay? I said, I'm going to be baptized tomorrow. And I said, I know how you can help me. Please look at this as a strength, not a weakness. I was so tied up into my identity and control as a man that I was not allowing myself to continue to surrender to what God has in store for me, what's possible for me outside of my control. I needed to hold on. And I asked her, I just said, please look at this as a strength, not a weakness. I'm sobbing. I'm not a crier, man. She was so shocked to see me cry. I've probably cried, count how many times I cried in front of her on one hand. Not because I'm big and bad, but just because that was just like numb from what I went through when I was younger and what I've gone through. And I was just like, this is a strength. Jeff, the next day, I go to church for the first time in 25 years, and I'm going to get baptized. And I believe, man, that like, not just God, but Jesus is the way. His principles are the way. What he teaches is the way. And so I get inside the pool. I'm struggling. I'm depressed still. Some hope. And As soon as I get dunked and I come up from the water, immediately the darkness is gone. Like palpably, like like the weight was gone, man. Like I literally felt all the anger, the depression, all of it. I was still going through things, obviously. My hip and now my income's shorted and all this stuff. But like the darkness was gone, man. And I've been a follower of Jesus ever since, man. Proudly. Like I can't even hold it back now. I don't say to everybody like, this is how you should live. But man, I'll tell you this, Jesus offers something that nothing else can. And it's a beautiful thing, man. And so now I've been given the gift to share this story of resilience in any which way. Whether I'm not a big religion guy, but I'm a big relationship guy. And there's a big difference, So if that answers that question.
Absolutely. I feel like I need to sit in that for a second.
Mm.
It's really powerful.
Man, God is good, Jeff. God is good. I'll tell you that. Yeah, for the first time having real conviction to understand what that means, like, it's crazy, man. And there's no going back. There's no turning back.
Can you tell me what the surrender is?
Yeah, so you've all probably experienced something innately inside of you that's like intuition. Let's just call it intuition if you don't want to call it God. Where something in your gut, something in your heart is telling you like move in this direction or invest in this or do this or pick up the phone and call this person or something in your gut, and you can resist it or you can surrender to it. Now, there's micro surrendering in my mind, like those types of things, or there are these big existential surrenders that you have to happen, like I experienced on the mountain or the mountain of recovery. That's what surrender means to me. It means like get out of your own way and just trust, man. Trust. Have a little bit of faith that, what you're doing and how you're moving is going to pay off for the positive, even when you can't see the other side.
So you help other people face their own mountain today. And what's the first lie most people believe when they hit their own mountain?
That they're not as strong as they think they are. I mean, that's usually the first one, that they have to do it all, that they have to hold it all. That's the first lie. But to be honest with you, Jeff, most people don't come prepared in the first place. One of the very first statements that I heard from the organization the tour that I was working with, there's over 100 something people that was on tour with us on that big tour. It's a big artist. And they were like, Kenny, you were the only person out here that probably would have had the forethought to jump. That would have had the forethought to keep moving forward through all of that. Because most people submit to the things in their lives, the quick pleasures or the overindulgence. Most people aren't even as prepared and sharp as they need to be able to think that quickly or have the physical stamina to endure. And so most people start as a deficit, and that's why they don't think they're as strong as they really are. You end up bringing a part of you that you do not know is in you when you go through crisis like this. But like, if you don't have a preliminary practice beforehand, you're going to struggle. I mean, you're going to struggle anyways, but it could stop you. You might struggle to the point where you give up. You submit, not surrender to the guidance to push forward, but literally submit to the crisis.
How is that butterfly showing up for you today?
Well, now every time I see a butterfly, it shows up in gratitude, but it's now louder for me. God's voice is louder in my life to where not only through butterflies, but through other guides, I like to call them, that I'm continuing to see as I move through this. Jeff, this happened last August, 9 months ago. This was only 9 months ago. Like you're one of the handful of few times that I've actually been able to tell this story in its entirety, And so I'm diving into a whole new mountain of unknown of where this is actually going to head. Like, I don't know, but I'm like just surrendering and following it. In my mind, I think, oh man, I could just go and move towards something more secure than trying to, you know, speak and teach and write this book, right? But like, I got to do this, you know? And so that's how it's showing up these days.
And what's the cost of us not following, facing the mountain?
Well, you're living it now, man. And if you're going through unexpected crisis, the cost is, well, in my case, it would have been death, It would have been death in the leap off the mountain. It would have been death in my recovery of not surrendering to Jesus. You know, if you have an unexpected crisis in your life, one that pushes you to the point to where you want to give up, you don't think that you're going to make it through, you have to keep moving forward because the alternative could be the most extreme thing that you think about. Or it could be even worse, Walking Dead complacency, where you're just going through the motions. I've been there too. That was like that depression time where I was going through the darkness. That was what that was. That was me not surrendering. That was me trying to control the situation. And sometimes you just got to like go, okay, I don't know I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything. And I can trust. In the Bible, it talks about in Matthew that God will shine a light at your feet, be a lamp unto your feet. He doesn't say he's going to show you the whole 100 miles ahead of you and show you the whole entire thing. He's like at your feet. That's faith. That's surrender. Surrendering that you're just taking the right step and the next step forward.
If your son was facing his own mountain, what would you want him to know?
I would want him to know that God's with him and that he's stronger than he thinks he is. I want everyone to know that. But if my kids were going through something like that, I want them to know to keep fighting. Do not quit. Do not give up. Fight, man. Fight, because God's with you. Believe that, trust that, have faith in that. Cry out for him, ask for the help, and then push, man. Keep moving forward. Keep moving forward.
Last question. What's the thing you're most grateful for having gone through that?
My relationship with God. Up until then, it was, hey, if I do this or if I do that, or maybe I could, do this and God will be good with me and maybe I'll get the blessing. What I understand now is I can't do anything to get God's blessing. He's going to literally forgive and give me grace no matter anything that I've gone through and anything that I've done or fallen short of. And so I feel like now I have a true relationship with him. Obviously I'm grateful to be back with my kids and my family, but my relationship with God, man, it's like, it's everything now. It's everything.
How do you balance that though? Like God is everything, but how do you not drift into the place of letting it run your life? That's not quite what I mean, but um, maybe being fundamentalist versus being in the flow of God.
Yeah, well, I want God to run my life. I have not done the best job that I could do, and I know that God has bigger plans for me. And so for me, man, letting God run my life and me just putting in the work and being able to execute on his guidance, like I'm down with that. It feels so freeing. The irony behind it, it doesn't feel like it's not a crutch, it's about trust. It's a whole different thing. It's not about religion, it's about relationship. And it's about surrendering to the guidance of that faith that what he wants for me is going to ultimately be the right decisions for me and my family.
Let's wrap it up there. Not every man makes it off the mountain. Some stay buried under the life they thought they had to live. Some keep running. But Kenny didn't run. He crawled, he listened, he followed something small, fragile, and relentless. If you're in the dark, if you're bleeding and alone, the way out probably won't look like a path. It might look like a whisper, a symbol, a sign that makes no sense until you followed it. It's an initiation. You're not broken, you're being called. Thanks, Kenny.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you, brother.